All right. Hey, Joe, good morning. Thanks for coming on Camacho's Food Service Report 2019. Super glad that you're on. We've known each other for quite a long time, I think going over 5 years now. And I personally am aware of your background, and you're going to have to course correct me if I'm off on this. So,
Okay.
uh, you're the largest food service dealer, food service equipment dealer in basically the tri-state area around New York City.
Well, we're not dealers, we're manufacturers reps, but yeah, we are currently the largest in New York Metro. Uh,
Okay. Uh, and my apologies for getting that wrong. I just know that you spec a lot of equipment out there into perhaps the biggest market in the U.S. And tell me a little bit about your background with MAFC and those things, FCSI and I know we're going to see you down at NAFM coming up and the FCSI symposium. So, but certainly would love for you to tell the audience your background in your own words.
sure. Um, so, a career spanning 5 or 6 decades in food service equipment. So, one of those lifers, all I've ever known. We been a partner in the Joe Ferri Associates for close to 25 years. And we represent mostly back of the house major equipment. We also do furnishings and small wares and tabletop. And right now we're about 12 people and based in Fairfield, New Jersey.
Got it. And I've seen pictures of your facilities there. You've got what looks to be a pretty sweet little test kitchen and gardens on property. Yeah, you're farm to table.
We are, when we bought the building 3 years ago, we had noticed this gorgeous southern exposure with a half acre of flat land. And I said,
Sweet.
that the Mediterranean side of me just
Yep.
insisted that we grow tomatoes. And we're in New Jersey, so it's the Garden State, right?
Right, right. And I've not been able to travel outside of Hoboken. Forgive me if I messed up the name of the town. From what I understand, New Jersey really is the Garden State. That there's a
Yeah.
lot of farmland in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So someday, hopefully, I can get up there and poke around and such. The For your garden there, I have a resource for you, and you may be aware, maybe already aware of it. If you go to rareseeds.com, they are seed collectors, and you can choose from 20 different kinds of zucchini, 50 different kinds of apple varieties, and whatnot. For your garden out back, it's a phenomenal resource. So, anyways, the purpose of us getting together this morning is really to get your top three predictions on food service equipment headed into 2019. I know that we feel like you're a top expert in the field here at Camacho. We'd love to get a sneak peek from you. So, what are we going to see at Kitchen Innovation Center at the NRA show? What's out there that's coming up that we might not see at Kitchen Innovations? What's coming at us?
So it's interesting. I mean, it was a great segue talking about gardens because one of the very interesting things that's going on the equipment side is indoor gardening. Um, and several factories have a appliance that will facilitate either starting seeds and or hydroponic growing and or microgreen production. And one of which we represent, has a the only NSF approved for commercial kitchen use. And then we've seen so many variations of this theme, and particularly here in New York, we have I think it started in Chicago with the rooftop gardens, but now we've progressed into basement gardens and whole facilities that are being developed for the indoor gardening. So I think you see a lot of that at NAFM in particular. It's a hot area.
let me ask you about that line there. So I could, in my experience in the kitchen, there's a lot of wasted vertical space, if you will. The walls, whatnot. And so I always thought that if you could bring part of the farm into the garden, into the kitchen, and take advantage of that wall space, that's above the tables and not uh, it would be really intriguing. Now, obviously, you're not going to replace your entire purchasing, activity on produce, especially around potatoes. But is that what you're seeing? Can that apply to, say, that 6 to 8 inch of space on the wall, on the face of the wall, and the chef can grow gherkins?
Well, not yet. And I suppose that will be the next logical step. Right now, these units look more like a reach-in refrigerator. Uh,
Okay.
and so traditional flats of starter flats, if you will, are what's being used. And you'll see this in retail grocery industry as well. Some of the more enlightened grocers have those type of setups uh, on the retail sector. But
Right.
I like the idea of doing it on the walls. If you've seen some of the stuff that's going on in Europe with the outdoor wall gardens,
Right,
it makes
biophilic design.
a lot of sense to use those surfaces.
We've had some conversations with some of our corporate clients, corporate design clients. In fact, we pitched, we shared with Norfolk Southern and their corporate headquarters move from Virginia down here to Midtown Atlanta. Early on in the process, we shared with the architect and Norfolk Southern, the client, this idea of biophilic design. And the question posed to them was, how would you be interested in going down this path of bringing the garden into the corporate offices? And I'm not yet at liberty to say what their decision was on that, but they were definitely intrigued by it. And you certainly see that in Asia, in a lot of construction now in Asia. Um, and it not only for food service, it not only can leverage the freshness of product, the grab and go convenience, if you will, of a fresh piece of produce. Uh, it also contributes to the environment and to the healthiness of the environment, producing oxygen, and bettering the lifestyle, the life environment for human endeavors inside of the four walls.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of our first installations was in Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Institute, and it's spiritually uplifting. We see it when we demonstrate the equipment, how folks really react on a very visceral level uh, to nurturing, to growing, to being part of a greater good, and it's encouraging. And so, with these small innovations, I don't, like you said, we're not going to replace, 50-pound sacks of potatoes, but we are doing some greater good, and perhaps, taking that first step towards um, doing a different sustainable gardening technique.
Right. And I imagine one of the advantages of having them in basically these stand-up refrigerator boxes, right, is uh, it may be easier to convince the health department that this is all good, in the inside the environment.
No doubt.
Some of the other applications that I've seen, on the web from Asia and that rely on, natural air being allowed in without screenage, but they're a little, they have different operating parameters in other places. Well, that's very cool. I'd love to get some literature from you on that specifically. and take a deeper look into that. That's certainly a passion place for me, and it flows into just a little sidebar on this particular prediction. It flows into well certification for buildings, as well. The food service component of well, and part of that food service component in well certification is upon the operator to provide fresh ingredients, locally sourced to the patrons of the facility.
Can't get much more local.
Not in 20 foot, 10 steps, and that all, you mentioned that rooftop gardens kind of started out in Chicago. I think there was a couple of places in the country. I want to go back about 20 years because I'm thinking Portland, Oregon, and there were some rooftop gardens that restaurants were popping up, 20 years ago out there. That certainly was a big, still is today, a big drive. There's a hotel in downtown Chicago. I forget the name of it. It's about 15 stories. It's one of the old 100-year-old hotels, and they've got beehives on
Yeah.
on the roof. And I managed to get up there with the sous chef during an NRA show and take a look at it. You didn't want to get too close to the edge because it only had a 2-foot wall around the edge of the roof, and it's 15 stories down. But they said that the beehives there in downtown Chicago were thriving. They were finding nutrient sources in downtown. There's a lot of different ways that I think that we as in the food service industry can certainly impact the environment, and this is a great way to do that. All right, moving on to number 2. What's your second prediction for 2019?
In line with some of the disruption that's coming on in the operator community with virtual restaurants, ghost kitchens, commissaries, that's driving a lot of what we're doing currently in terms of kitchen design and fulfillment, with larger projects going in because of the scale of production. We're seeing much broader application of steam equipment and combi ovens and the like that will fulfill those greater needs of kitchens that will supply various different concepts simultaneously.
Got
So
it.
the virtual kitchen or virtual restaurant is one that doesn't have seating and will have a dozen different concepts being produced out of that facility, and maybe through Grubhub or Uber Eats or
Deliveries.
the other. So that translates to larger equipment, larger footprints, and the like, and of course flexibility and modularity that we've been talking about for years anyway. So the equipment has to be able to produce various different ethnic cuisines, various different day parts, and that's a big driver right now.
So I had a conversation last year with Earl Dardick, Monkey Media Software, and the Catering Institute, and we talked about the drive by fast casual brands or multi-unit brands towards off-premise catering and towards delivery services. Exactly down this road, a centralized kitchen that doesn't necessarily have seats, that can handle the sales volume for the area, and that was shifting, as you just said, the design of the walk-in establishments. If you're shifting your McAllister's Deli catering from the store to a central commissary, you can go after a smaller footprint with the retail location, and the commissary can serve a broader radius from that. And there's been a number of concepts that we've talked to that are challenged by the delivery services, Uber Eats, Amazon Eats. They a couple of them that we've talked to have been contemplating, do they build out an additional kitchen space just to handle that, part of service, so it doesn't impact their sit down part of service. There's a lot going on in that space. While you were describing this, I was thinking about, um, are you seeing any kind of a demand for facilities that can serve multiple brands, in simultaneous day parts? So two or three brands going working in the same facility, but around lunchtime. And kind of a different question is, what are you seeing with these centralized facilities around? Oh, what do they call it? There's a term for it. Flex pricing. Where in that period between lunch and dinner, and the operators changing their pricing, is that impacting the design at all for these things?
I haven't seen the flex pricing that's being applied to the gig economy to the food service model. It's an interesting question. I did want to add too that there's a couple of other factors that are being touted in the industry right now. One is the quality assurance issue. Everyone talks about the last mile, and in the backseat of some Uber driver's car, are we getting the full quality, and how do we guarantee that? And we've seen a lot in the general press about some of these drivers being implicated in crimes, et cetera. So that's one thing that the industry is tackling in terms of
And trust issues, for the consumer.
yeah.
Right.
Um, and the other half of that is those receptor sites. So if we're doing a commissary kitchen, and there is a retail component that's decoupled from the kitchen, besides the last mile of getting the food there, the reconstituting or rethermalizing of the food at the location is another major trend that we're seeing, and that's connectionless equipment, for lack of a better term. So we've started down the path with ventless equipment where it doesn't have to be hooked up to a standard um, hood ventilated, a canopy hood, and there's many different permutations of that. And one of the drivers there is real estate. So if I'm doing a major pizza concept in a densely populated urban area, I can do it in 800 square feet now, and not and in the basement of a high rise, and not have to worry about going up 20, 30, 40, 60 stories with vent pipe. I can I can use my commissary kitchen to produce a blast freezer to bring it down to temperature, some of these other conveniences to deliver it, and then to bring it back up to serving temperature, a ventless appliance. Now all I need is electric and some sinks, and I'm in the retail space. And when I call up my realtor asking for my next location, I don't have to worry about ventilated space. So we're actually remove those golden handcuffs of the real estate as attached to retail food service.
Right. What are you seeing that in the C-store component as well, with the new menus that are coming out in convenience store?
Oh, absolutely. That was actually they were the initiators. I mean, they're a major driver of the ventless technologies, and they continue to be so. Uh, One of the issues there is I think they're missing the boat in terms of personal connection. Um, there's a lot of AI and a lot of technology built into those stores, and I think we have reached a point in the cycle where they have to rethink their layout because there's not enough personal interaction. The food seems to be coming from what's the old Star Trek term, the replicator. You're not talking to a human, so the pendulum is probably shifting a little bit in the other direction in the C store.
Right. Um, there's a show going on right now that I'd love to go to, and specifically around food, and that's the Consumer Electronics Show.
Oh boy, yeah.
So I'm going to have to do an inquiry of Marcia Collier, and because she's been going to that thing for gosh decades now, and see if she saw anything this year. But because there's got to be some kind of food technology, robotic stuff that is being shown at CES. But very interesting developments in that space, and kind of tangential or aligned with some of the experiments that are being done with delivery. Drone delivery, robotics. I was in DC the last 2 days, and I actually saw one of those little test robot delivery vehicles being shepherded down by a human down the sidewalk, and in that. And actually, Hudson Reilly of NRA, the economist, he spoke to that during one of our meetings and said, those robots, they're not allowed to be autonomous out there yet. They still have to have a human shepherd with them. There's a lot of movement in that space, a lot of disruption, attempts at disruption in that space. All right. So, and finally, number three, your third top prediction for 2019 for us. What do you
You just
got?
did it. You just hit it. It's robots, 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 right? Um, and some of the rushes from CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, a lot of smart appliances, uh, and that has to do with artificial AI, artificial intelligence, and robotics, and how that all ties together. We saw the salad robot at NRA. There's mixologists, certain areas where we're seeing those robot arms, fry basket handling, burger flipping, a couple of repetitive tasks. I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve here, but it'll be interesting to see what our engineers have come up with at the NAFM show next month, vis-a-vis the robotics. But that has to be a major driver, in from production to fulfillment.
It's interesting because it's kind of a two-sided coin, if you will. Um, the restaurant industry is hungry for skilled workforce. We don't have enough skilled people out there to bring into the industry to satisfy the need, and yet on the same hand, if you compare the restaurant industry to other industries, our cost of doing business is far greater because because other industries have adopted technology that allow for much greater efficiencies in producing widgets, and yet we're not there, just like you said, and we're, if I was going to throw a number at you, I'd say we're probably, I would guess we're about two years, maybe 3 years out from seeing anything that's truly disruptive in robotics.
I would concur. Yeah.
They got the 3D printer, and there's some pastry chefs that are playing with that. But at what point are we going to see a 3D printed hamburger get dropped automatically onto the grill when somebody uses Uber Eats on their phone and places that order? I mean that.
So,
Yeah, and even if we want to go down that direction with some of the food that we're doing, so will the consumer embrace it?
well, I think where we're going to see the first early adopters there is in vending, right? And we've been seeing pizza vending machines for a while. I think they've come to fruition.
Japan
Certainly,
with their sushi vending from 20 years ago, yeah. Keep going, keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, it's it's very exciting right now what's being done in that space, and it goes along with those non-traditional locations that we were talking about, ventless and cordless equipment. How do you penetrate those spaces? By the mailbox in an apartment building or a dorm room. There's so many areas that present opportunities for the vending appliances, and there's a lot more that can be done and within the confines of a piece of vending equipment. So I think that's where you'll see the first foray into all of this IoT. They can communicate and wirelessly with whoever's needs to replenish the equipment. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I believe that we'll see that this year. I don't think we're out 3 years with that. But as far as a restaurant fully, a production line, yeah, we're a little bit of ways away on that one.
All right. You think somebody watching this is thinking, like I just thought this, about, okay, how can I grab 400 square feet in a high rise, and throw in a robotic food vending system, where the only human employment that I have to provide to service that is restocking it. You know,
A lot of hurdles there.
money can you make off of 100 400 square foot locations around a big city, so uh, well, very cool. So what's your travel schedule like coming up? We're going to see you at NAFM and FCSI down in Orlando in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the NRA show and Kitchen Innovations down there.
Yep.
What else you got lined up on your plate?
Not a lot. We've got Milan, the host show in the fall. So, with a double whammy of the two largest food equipment shows in the world happening every other year, it's quite a challenge to budget and our time and other resources to make sure that we're giving them good coverage.
Right, right. Um, just briefly for our audience, I want to ask you this question, and it is, what got you into doing what you're doing today? Where'd you come from? Why are you passionate about this?
So my grandfather was a chef. My dad worked in restaurants his whole life. My mom worked in restaurants. I'm the last of 7 kids. Um, my 6 older sisters, all married folks that were involved in food service. There was no hope for me, Jeff. Just no
Well, it certainly is a passionate business, a passionate career. I started washing dishes at a Bob's Big Boy when I was 14. My family were foodies, gourmands, if you will. The Galloping Gourmet, my dad used to watch, and all of that. They had a supper club. So growing up in Helena, Montana, population of about 35,000 at the time, they had a supper club of 4 couples that would have make dinner. One of the couples would make dinner for the other 3 couples every other month, and then on the other months, the odd months, the supper club, would throw a big party. Uh, and that was called the Helena Obese Gastronomic Society, or HOGS for short. Pig roast out at the lake, all of it. Way too many half-consumed cups of alcohol left over in the morning. I won't tell you what I did with those as a teenager. But it really is an amazing industry. You can teach a young person anything about any kind of line of business under the four walls and the roof of a restaurant, whether it's purchasing or customer service or production management. It's a great industry to be a part of. And what I find fascinating is that I'm on my 35th year as we continue as I continue moving forward. Even though this is the second largest industry in the U.S. in terms of employment numbers, people employed, it also is one of the most fraternal and industries that I've ever witnessed. The relationships in this business are awesome. Hey Joe, really want to thank you for getting on a call this morning and giving us your insights and your wisdom. And if anybody wants to reach out to you and ask you a question, or get your thoughts on something. Maybe they're thinking about doing a restaurant or or whatever. How can they find you?
Well, my Twitter feed is at Joe Ferri, Joeferri. Um, and my email address is Joe, at pacinkaferry.com, PECINKAFERRI.com. That's our firm, and be happy to correspond. And I appreciate you having me, Jeffrey. It's always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you next month in sunny Orlando.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll put the links to your Twitter. I think you're also on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, you can't help but find me on social media. I'm a .NET junkie.
And we'll throw the Pachinko Ferry website in the show notes and create some links so that people can reach out to you if they have a question. All right, Joe. See you in a few weeks.
We'll see you then.
Bye bye.